Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel today. I'm Anna Baker, Marketing Manager at Vanderbloemen. And today I have with me my COO, Sutton Turner, and
Hey,
this
Anna.
panel of pastors. And we are going to be discussing the continuation of reopening the church. So today is the first time that we actually have pastors joining us who have been reopening. So we have the unique experience of hearing how it's actually going and lessons learned and what we can do to better prepare to reopen. I just want to make a quick reminder that this Thursday, we will also have a Facebook Live on the Paycheck Protection Program loan application, loan forgiveness. So if that would help you, join us on Thursday. And with that, I will get to you, Sutton.
Cool. Well, thanks, Anna. Great job on your first podcast, Facebook Live. I appreciate you doing that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
You're going to be taking lots of questions, and I want to encourage you to interrupt us as we're discussing this with these questions. We brought together a group of pastors from across the United States that are in the process of reopening or that have reopened, and to answer your questions and just talk about the details. Since the president came out late last week, at Vanderbloemen, we've gotten a ton of questions, very detailed about how do we do this? How do we do that? How are other churches doing that? And so first of all, we don't want to be political in any way. We want to help as many possible people come back to church in the safest way possible. And so we're going to facilitate that discussion here. I've got 6 pastors, 3 from Texas, 1 from Arizona, 1 from Missouri, and 1 from Florida. And they're all we got 3 churches that have had services this last week. One of the churches has had services 2 weeks now. We've got 2 churches that are launching this weekend with live folks in their venue, and then 1 church that's 2 weeks out. And so my hope is to have a really good discussion with these pastors to help us and to answer as many questions as you can. And I really want to start with Pastor Scott in Florida, because Pastor Scott has had 2 weeks of services. And we're going to work that way. We're going to start off with Pastor Scott, and then we're going to work to Pastor Paul as far as folks that are reopening. Well, welcome, Pastor Scott. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Well, so tell us where you're from, your church, the size of your church, and then where y'all are on the reopening process.
All right, we're in Port St. Lucie, Florida. The name of the church is Sunlight Community Church. So we actually have 3 campuses. Our central campus is here in Port St. Lucie. We also have a campus in Lake Worth, which is in Palm Beach County, south of here, and then a campus in Miami, which is in Dade County in Miami. And anyway, because we're in Florida, we're probably a little bit unique in that Florida is one of those states in the nation that has been quicker toward the reopening in general. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on the front end of reopening, our Governor DeSantis, came out, at the end of last month already and started to put forward a plan together with a lot of business leaders and government leaders about how to reopen, and wanted to do it in a safe, smart, simple way. And what he did is he proposed reopening in phases. Okay. And so different industries are reopening according to different standards. It's interesting that, of course, in the state of Florida, some of you will recall this, that when the shutdown first started happening, almost every single church shut down. There was a church on the west coast of Florida over in Tampa where a pastor was actually arrested by the sheriff for holding services. And then after that happened, the governor actually did say that the state is not mandating churches to close, that they might be considered essential services. But the effect was all churches pretty much across the board closed their in-person services in Florida. As Governor DeSantis went to open, every different industry had a bunch of guidelines. When asked about the church, our governor's response was, well, we've never closed the churches. They've been free to worship this entire time, and really didn't give any guidelines. And so we were left a little bit to try to figure out those guidelines ourselves, to try to interpret based on, how everything else was opening, how we were going to reopen. what we wound up doing is we just looked at other entities like retail space and restaurants, which in the first phase were allowed to open at 25% capacity with social distancing. And we decided, well, our central campus generally has about 600 people on a Sunday morning. We have 700 seats in our auditorium. We decided, although we normally have 2 services, to just have 1. And we decided that we would cap that service at 25% of our capacity. So,
on both of your campuses or just one of your campuses, your main campus?
Palm Beach County and Dade County were both excluded from phase 1 because COVID-19 is a little more prevalent there. The governor's now let those counties go into phase 1 as well. So they're a couple weeks behind us. They're actually going to have their first service coming up this upcoming Sunday in person. Wow. So here in St. Lucie County, we had our first in-person service on this campus before our other campuses.
Got it. Cool.
Anyway,
thank you.
We tried to put at 25%. We put a number of other things in place. And now we've had 2 weekends of that, as you mentioned.
That's awesome. Pastor Hayes, why don't you give us a little update on where you guys are, where you're located, size of wise, and just kind of where you are in the process.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We are in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We're down the southeast corner of Missouri, and we run about 900 on a Sunday. Our last in-person service before this last Sunday was March 22nd. And so we went a few weeks of online only, never did anything in the parking lot. We have a great media team and a worship team that we did pretty much full scale Sunday, only it was online. And our governor said on the 17th churches could reopen. We wanted to give it a week after that day to see kind of what the community response was. And so we opened our first Sunday this last Sunday on the 24th.
So give us a little view of what was your attendance like this last weekend?
So we had about 315 people in the seats. But when you look at
style, so you got family style, you got families coming together.
Yeah. We didn't do just a whole lot. I don't know how much you want me to get into the weeds, but one of the better things that we did was we talked to some people. We did like a market research style conversation. And what we found out is the people that wanted to come back, if the more restrictions we put out there, the likely they were going to not come back again. And so we sort of mapped out with our bulletin, hey, here's where we want you to sit. We had a lot of signs up about social distancing. We had masks if people wanted masks. We had sanitizer, but we didn't do a whole lot as far as, making people sit in certain places.
Okay, that's good. Pastor Brian, why don't you kind of give us an update on where you guys are and where your church is located size-wise and just where you are on the process?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sutton. So we are in Katy, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston to the west side of Houston. We have about just under 1,000 on a normal Sunday pre-disruption across 2 different campuses. Our main campus runs about 75% of that, and then our second campus is the other 25% of that. We reopened just 2 days ago. Like Hayes, just on the 24th was our first in-person service. I think we stopped. When you said the 24th, I was trying to look back and see what date that was, but I think we stopped about the same time and moved completely online throughout the disruption until this past Sunday. So
it's great.
It was good. It was exciting to be reopened.
I bet that was. Pastor Brad, why don't you kind of give us an update? I know that you guys are getting ready, geared up for this weekend, but talk to us. One of the things I want you to make sure that you talk about is your drive up, outside thing that you all did this last weekend. If you could kind of explain that as well, but kind of first introduce yourself.
Sure. Brad Fleury, title is Executive Pastor of Ministry here at Kingsland. I'm right down the road from Brian and Katy. So pre-COVID, we were about 3,500. We got 2 campuses. So for us, similar is March 15th was our last in-person service. Really, March 8th was, for all purposes, March 15th. Majority of people were online. There were a handful here, but March 15th was the last. And then we will open back up this Sunday, May 31st. We've had 2 drive-up experiences for our congregation. One we had on Easter, that it was specifically a stay in your car, drive in. We had rented multiple screens placed throughout our campus on a parking lot on both campuses. And then this past Sunday, we did the same thing, but we added the opportunity where if those wanted to get out of their car, we had like almost church on the lawn. And so that was really interesting. So people, it was a good attendance, specifically at our 9:30 hour. At 11, we got rained out. So we had some out there, and as they continued to get out of their cars, it started to pour. So a lot of them hopped in their cars and drove to the other part of the parking lot just to watch. So we've done that twice, but one time with the opportunity for people to get out and set in lawn chairs and, blankets in the grass and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of tell us where you guys are in the process?
Thanks, Sutton. Yeah, Jeff Carlson from Phoenix, Arizona, Christ Church, senior executive pastor here. We run just under 2,000, 3 campuses across the valley. Largest being about 1,300, then 500, then 200. That 200 meets in a school, so that changes some of the components for reopening there. We are reopening this weekend at 2 of our locations, this Saturday and Sunday at our largest location, Sunday at the other, and then the one that meets in the school is just doing some gatherings in the pastor's home to kind of family gatherings there. So we're prepping for it. We've kind of taken the approach. One of the main questions we've asked is how much we're willing to modify our experience to open again. And just came to the decision that we don't want to modify the experience a ton. So we're opening with kids ministry. We're opening with some precautions, obviously, but trying to keep this service and the experience as similar as it was back on March 8th when we last met.
Cool. Paul, Pastor Paul, why don't you give us a little update now? You're 2 weeks out, right? You got 2 weeks, so which is great because I wanted to have a variety of churches on here. So kind of give us an update on where you are and size of your church, etc.
Yeah, so Paul Willis, I am the executive pastor of operations up here at Woods Edge Community Church. We're in Spring, Texas, which is a little bit north of Houston, right in the Vanderbloemen backyard, and brothers to some of the other Texas churches right around here in the area. Mm-hmm. We shut down, beginning of March, and we've been running online ever since. We've had a pretty great online experience before this started. We've got a really good team of people that have really focused on getting online experience out to people while they're on vacation and whatnot. So there wasn't a whole lot of transition that we needed to do to make our online experience great. And so that has been extremely helpful for us. We will start on June 7th. So we've had a lot of time to learn from what other churches are doing in the area. And we run, before COVID-19 started, we were probably running about 1,500 in the auditorium. We're a single campus, one big, large campus. And we have, the unique thing about our experience is that we have an active COVID-19 testing site on our campus. So we're learning a lot about what's happening from the front lines of the medical community. So
that's awesome.
Thanks for having us here, Sutton.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk pre-service. Okay. So is anyone doing any type of registration, kind of like reservations type of thing before people arrive at the church? Are y'all doing anything to like plan out the size of each service, how to expect, what time do people, is anybody doing anything like that? And if you could just raise your hand, just like, okay. So, all right. So Brian, why don't you tell me what you're doing and what you're using, and let's kind of get into details.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So we're using Brushfire because we've got a lot of experience with it in the past and event registration. We're running 2 services. At least we did this Sunday. We'll see where that goes in subsequent Sundays, but we planned for 2 services. And so the way we looked at this was we have about 500 seats, a little more, but about 500 seats in our auditorium. And so we went every other row. We took the first 2 rows out from stage, and then we went every other row. And so that left us about 240 seats.
Okay, let me ask you a question there. You took the first 2 rows out. Was that because of the distance that you wanted from the worship team? Was that the reason why?
Yep, absolutely. Nobody on stage is wearing a mask when they're singing or speaking. We're mask free. So we thought for comfort level and everything else, we took those first 2 rows out. So
Okay.
that brought us to about 240 seats. We then took registration for 100. So we thought in our heads we could get 150 people in the room with physical distancing, right? It's a little bit of a jigsaw game. How many people are in a family unit? They sit together, 3 seats of space, and it's a jigsaw puzzle. So we thought we could get about 150 in the auditorium, and we took registrations for up to 100. We believe in our culture, we're just going to have people that, call the fellowship, our church, their home, but we'll forget to register, or we'll bring somebody extra. Then we wanted to have plenty of room for any guests that showed up. We didn't want to be in a place where we had to turn anybody away. So the thought process was do registrations for 100, leave ourselves a buffer of 50, and then we would go from there. We had some backup plans for, using other large spaces on our campus for, overflow rooms, but
That's good.
Sunday.
So Pastor Scott, what are you guys doing with registration or handling, how many people are coming to different services or anything like that?
Yeah, so we didn't do anything with regard to registration, and probably our number one concern the first Sunday, and we made a contingency plan for it, was, will we get too many people? So
Right.
we didn't have any children's ministries, we didn't have any greeting ministries or any ushering ministry. We made it the service as simple as possible. We didn't even offer a nursery. What we were concerned about is if we had a tremendous response and let's say 300-400 people showed up, what would we do? And what we decided was that the first 150 to maybe 175, we'd put them in the auditorium. And then we have a large fellowship hall that's like a gymnasium. We decided that we'd put the rest over there if we had more. And that what we'd do is I'd go over and have a greeting, but then we'd play the online service that we'd already created, which would be like a bridge. And then the following week, if necessary, we'd go to 2 services. Well, as it turned out, we didn't reach those numbers. People were more tentative, and that may have to do with both their tentativeness and the fact that we don't have any children's ministries or other services. Maybe some combination of those 2 things, but we haven't had to face that. And we probably, as we get into phase 2 and phase 3, we think our, the basic rubric that we're working with across the state of Florida is going to change, and we'll be able to handle that as we go and make adjustments.
So do you, just kind of picking up on what Brian said, do you have masked worship band? Or when you preach, are you masked at all?
No, we told people that masks were recommended but not required. Okay. But both myself and anyone else on stage, no one wore masks.
Okay. Now, is there distance? Are you worried about the distance? So are people set back or any? I mean,
yeah, they're set back enough where that was not one of our concerns.
Okay. Okay. Brad, your thoughts on as you plan this weekend as it relates to registration, maybe setback to the front row, masks on stage?
For us, we're using Eventbrite. We're familiar with that. So it's just linked to our website. So you can go to our website and you can choose one of our 3 services and then one of the 3 venues. So in essence, we have capacity for 9 services on a Sunday. We're planning this Sunday for 6. So you can pick, 8, 9:30, 11, you could choose and then register for those. And then what's, for us, I think I mentioned before, Sutton, is what pre-COVID, what frustrated us, what was our building layout. But then now in this time frame, it's one of the blessings because each one of those designated areas has designated entry points, exit points, bathrooms. And so we're able to really to deconflict along all of those. I'll ask Brian a question really quick. Brian, you guys were this weekend. How did that turn out from what you thought, and then what transpired?
You mean specifically, Brad, like numbers perspective, attendance wise? Yeah. So we had probably about 10% of 950 or so. So we had about 95, 100 people pre-register. And then we probably had what really surprised me, about 75% of all of those that pre-registered actually attend. So we had 25% of the people who did not attend, or who did register, but then didn't attend service. And I'll just add this as a kind of idea on this pre-registration thing. We did say that we're going to ask our church to pre-register every single week. So we're only going to open up pre-registrations for this coming Sunday, Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. And the thought there was, we just thought our culture people would sign up for every Sunday from here until eternity, and then, you know, never let us know that they weren't coming. But it did surprise me that so many people registered and didn't show up.
So
Yeah, actually,
Hayes,
I've seen on that. I've seen no-show rates up to 60%. So the 25%, I'm actually encouraged by that number. We just opened up our registration. We're using the RSVP app. We've used that over the years for large events. We're reducing capacity, maxing at 50%. We made the decision not to move any chairs. We want the experience, we want the feel to look the same way, but if through signage and through shepherding and in communication ahead of time, we wanted as many chairs so people could spread out throughout the whole worship center. But using the RSVP app and 50%, but then we also added a service. So we went with an additional service to give a communication that we actually really care about the numbers and want to create that other service as well. So we can maximize.
Was that service on Sunday morning, or was that a Saturday night service?
Yeah, so we were already 1 Saturday, 2 Sunday, and we added a second on Saturday. So now 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday.
Okay. Hayes, talk to me.
Sir.
Tell me what you guys are doing. On the registration, kind of the seating, what you're planning, masks on stage. I think those are the three things that we've kind of hit right now.
So, and I have a question at the end for everybody else too. But we did not do registration. And again, I think the hardest thing about this is there's so much different culturally where you're located. So when we went to, like, if I go to Walmart, if I go to Lowe's, if I go to Buckeye, any of these places, majority of the people are not wearing masks. There's not, our county, Missouri has quite a few cases because we have St. Louis and Kansas City. But in our county, we just hit like 62 cases. And so we did not, one of the better things we did, we had a task force that we put together where we're blessed to have in our church, the county health director, another internal medicine doctor, and then 2 VPs from local hospitals. And so we kind of leaned on them for guidance and direction. And so we did not make masks mandatory. But we did offer them, and we did most of our signage was digitally on TVs in the lobby and on the screens. So we encourage masks. All the staff wore a mask. Nobody on stage wore a mask. None of the worship team, the pastor did not. I did the welcome Sunday. I did not wear a mask, but when we were in the lobby, all the staff, we still had guest services. So people holding the doors wore a mask. We still hand out a paper bulletin, and so we did not hand those out. We set them on tables for people to get. We had 2 tables set up in the lobby where we had masks available. We had somebody donate little personal-sized bottles of hand sanitizer, so we had that on each table. We had lots of signs in the bathroom about washing your hands. So my question, though, that's pretty much what we did. My question is, of the guys who have started, did you serve coffee?
Scott, what'd y'all do?
No, we did not.
Do you normally, though?
We specifically said that we had no planned fellowship time either before or after the service.
Okay.
We also, in doing that, we have an eye not toward just who's going to come the first time, but we have an eye toward who's going to come in subsequent weeks. Our thinking is that the first couple of weeks are going to be those who are the most courageous or are the least concerned. But those who don't come the first weeks, they have some level of concern. And so what we're hoping is that those who have some level of concern will alleviate their concerns. Good. And that's partially what's been guiding our thinking, is how to alleviate the second wave's concerns.
Good. All right, so I got a question. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Probably because I can't imagine a morning without coffee. We served coffee.
Okay.
We have a nonprofit coffee shop that is on our campus, and on normal Sunday mornings, pre-disruption, we give away brewed coffee, and it's a self-dispense type deal. This Sunday, we didn't do that. We set up tables, we staffed it with volunteers. And so for anybody who came into our church, our idea was to make it a touchless experience for them.
Yep.
They didn't have to touch the door. They didn't have to touch this, right? And so the coffee was the same way. We had a volunteer hand them the coffee, stir stick, sugar, all of that was individual, and it was handed to them. So
Okay.
So are those volunteers, are they in masks and gloves?
mask and gloves, yes.
Okay.
So our language was, we didn't say we're requiring masks, but we said it without using those words, right? And so we asked everybody that came on campus to wear masks. We asked volunteers who were like at the coffee station, like you alluded to, Sutton, to wear gloves. And we just, adopted the language of, we're doing this because we love you. We're asking you to wear a mask because you love others. And so
Right.
that's how we approached it.
So
Yes.
Paul, I got a question because I want Paul to get in here real quick. So Paul, you're actually a lot like most of the people that are watching right now. Okay, say they haven't started service.
Yeah.
And when the president came out late last week and said everybody can have church, I'm sure your phone, your email blew up on saying, okay, the president said we could have. And so I'd like you to talk about how you reacted, because you didn't have service this weekend and you got 2 more weeks. So talk to us about what you're doing communication wise on talking to your people.
Well, Sutton, our lead pastor, Jeff Wells, he's done a great job at managing the expectations of the congregation and just talking to them and having a conversation really about the fact of the matter is we've got to do kind of 2 things, right? Our what we're using right now is trust God, love people. But we also have to do the opposite. We have to love God and trust people. We have to trust that they're going to do the right thing. We have to trust that God is going to protect us, and both of them are required. And so there's the governmental, legalities that we have to step through, but there's also the wisdom that God calls us to seek before we open up. So we didn't want to do that in haste just by the pressure or the government's trying to open up businesses here in Texas really quickly to get, the businesses back in order, which is fantastic for those business owners. And we hope that and pray that those small business owners are going to be able to get back on their feet quickly. And then there's this pressure for the churches across America to open back up because of what the president's, what he said was. And so, we have had to manage that. And I believe it's all about managing those expectations. We want to open as fast as possible, as wise as possible with, going into lots of prayer and seeking a ton of wisdom. We also have some medical doctors on our board. I have a medical doctor that's running our testing center here on the site, and we're getting so much great information from both of them. So our elder boarders and our lead staff team has spent a lot of time in prayer over this, and we didn't want to open without all of these things coming together to make us feel like we're doing the right thing. So we have that responsibility of protecting our congregation as well as providing them a worship experience.
That's awesome. So let me ask you guys a question. Everybody else on this idea of communication, what's the best thing that you've done communication wise to your church as far as to help you during this reopening period that somebody here listening would go, man, that's a really good idea? What's something that
I'll jump on that because I love that question because, our senior pastor, Mark Anderson, has been in ministry for a long time, and he's just so eloquent in communication. But the best thing one thing that he did that I thought was vital was he communicated very clearly that we have to show grace to both sides.
Yeah.
And really, he even mentioned there's 3 different camps of people, right? You got the people who think we should have never shut down. You got the people who are really, really concerned about coming back. And then you got the people who are ready to come back, but also want to be, intentional and show grace to those who are concerned. And so that was the main point when we made the communication announcement that, hey, we're starting back up. That was the driving point. We didn't talk about logistics. We didn't talk about ministries yet. We did it in 2 phases where he did that, and he just talked about we have to show grace to both sides. And then we did a subsequent video that talked about all the details.
So you're sending that video out on your social media and you're putting that video up on your website, that type of things.
Yeah, we emailed it out.
Emailed it out. Okay.
We posted it on social media, put it on the website. And then we also, we had our deacons, a body of deacons that called. They're responsible for families. And we can run a list out of our software for those that don't have email. And so they called them.
Okay.
So we tried to make sure everybody was aware.
Jeff, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think one of the things early on that we were just committed to behind the scenes was the truth, something that we believe that how we talked about the crisis and how we talked to our church and community will be remembered a lot longer than any one single decision we made. So we've just been for now 9 weeks, 10 weeks, just what are we giving off? Because we're not going to, like you said, we're not going to come to a decision that everybody agrees with. So then we sought to frame the conversation in a way of things that were important to us, that we're going to act with conviction, carefully, and then compassionately. And so in any announcement that's made, just in anything that's written, anything that's dispersed, is just those three elements. And so then in the communication itself, similar to what was just communicated, we just had to acknowledge that there's different perspectives and we validated them. So we don't want to just simply be like, yeah, we know some of you are like this, but we understand there's people who are frustrated. They're just ready to be done with this. There's people who are suspicious because there's enough questions out there for people to be legitimately suspicious about some things. There's people who are fearful, they're concerned, legitimately concerned. And then there's people who are desperate, like they need to be gathering together. So just acknowledging that, validating that, then leading people to the commitment to gather. So we're just not naive in the fact that the experience of sitting and watching a service online at home could lead a segment of our gathering, a segment of our church to just think this isn't bad. And so we wanted to connect them to theological truth. We wanted to connect them to the longing of being together, what they're missing, what they're valuing, what they need. To then lay out, here's our plan, and then to leave it with, hey, we do have to love in spite of differences. We're not going to sacrifice unity in this season. So that's the way we've kind of set the culture, how we framed it, and then what our goals were in those communications. It was a video a video that just communicated, hey, we are opening our doors May 30th, 31st. Next week, you'll get more information. So then this past week, we sent out another communication, email, social with a video, and then a separate web page that just gave out all the information on that. So, and if people want to check that out, that's christaz.org /regathering.
That's awesome. Pastor Scott, what things would you say over these last couple of weeks from a communication standpoint, safety standpoint, assuring, like Hayes was saying, there's different people at different areas of the spectrum as far as their fears and whatnot. What would you say, man, I'm so glad we did that. I would suggest that to other churches that are considering reopening.
Yeah, actually, maybe I'll answer it in a different way. Okay. And here's how I'll come at it. I think we did our level best to communicate really well what was going to happen, what the expectations were, what the details were going to be. We used every available communication tool. We sent emails. We have a text messaging system. We sent text messages. We used our social media. We used our website. We used our voicemail. We used, you name it, we tried to use it. And here's, I guess it surprised me a little bit, which is why I want to bring it up. Even though we did our best and I thought we communicated very, very well, I've been surprised how many people, for one reason or another, just for whatever reason, didn't catch the communication. So in my neighborhood where I live, I had two different conversations with people I was walking or I was whatever. They stopped me and said, hey, when are services restarting? I said, man, last Sunday. And I guess the only thing I can say is, as far as communication goes, you may think you over communicated, and to try to get the message out to people who especially have not been in an in-person service for that period of time, I think there's a challenge to it. So when you think you've over communicated, hit the ⑥2 button. I think that's my statement.
Hey, Scott, what text message system do you use?
We have our own text messaging system. What is it? It's not one that's easily available. We have someone in our congregation who works in that, so not a product we can easily give out.
So Brad, talk to us about the communication that you've been doing, because you guys have done different things each week. And so as you're leading up to reopening this upcoming weekend, so talk to us about some of the things that you've learned from a communication standpoint.
Sure. Everybody hit the most important points of making sure your communication is value driven, right? Not just other information. So right off the bat, March 15th, we made the decision when everything was closing, we're not going to say what we're not doing. We're going to be the people that say what we are doing, right? So our 90% of our communication was what opportunities they had to gather, whether that was online or something else. So we were over the top of here's opportunities you have. Here's, as parents, here's what you have, resources for your family, for your kids. So that sort of drove what we're doing. Internally, we had certain points of communication, what was going to come from the senior pastor, what was going to come from executive staff. We also, is Ryan Rush, our senior pastor, a couple of things is for us, if something's really important, we preach our announcements, right? So if something's really key, it's going to be mentioned by him during a message, some part of it, right? And that's because everything else sometimes may get lost. And so we would highlight those opportunities during the message. That was a big part of it. We also suddenly did a number of what we called, it was already part of our vocabulary, what we did a couple times a year, town halls. So those are typically opportunities where it's just a couple of key leaders were on stage. We have those on a Sunday afternoon or Wednesday night, talk to our congregation. So we were able to do those. Our largest town halls happened in the midst of all of this. We used our live stream, we used Zoom. And so that's how we rolled out a lot of our plan. And we were able to, listen to people's concerns on both sides and to address those. And so that's been, that's what's helped us along the way.
That's awesome. Hey, Anna, you can come back on anytime when you've got some questions that you want to add. There she is.
Yeah, we're getting a bunch of great questions. So
give us your toughest one.
Okay. Toughest question is, are there any lessons learned, maybe something you wish you didn't do that you want to share with other churches, maybe something that surprised you with reopening?
I'm going to let this open to anybody that feels strongly about answering this question.
I'll answer.
Okay.
And this came from another church locally in our community. Way back in probably early April, one of our churches made a decision that they were going to reopen. I think it was May 14th, like I don't really know how but it gave them such an ample amount of time to plan and communicate. We made the decision on a Thursday, and 10 days later we reopened. And so what I would say, if I was going to do it, if I was going to give advice, is pick a date, even if it means pushing it, where you have plenty of time to plan logistically what that means. Because the 10 days before that service were really chaotic because every day something else came up. How do we handle bathrooms? We got to have signs. We got to have masks. We got to have sanitizer. How do we space the crowd? And so I would say I wish we would have planned farther in advance to have more time to communicate and think through, and also just communicating to your people so that they have a better understanding of what's happening.
So you mentioned bathrooms. Who wants to explain what you're doing with the bathrooms? Because I've gotten that question over the last 4 days many times on if you're leaving the door open, if you're using a kick foot plate, if you're how many people you're allowing in the bathroom, etc. Who wants to hit it?
Yeah, I'll take that
Paul.
one. Yeah, so I have a great facilities team. We're in a permanent facility, so we've done quite a few things. Right at the beginning of this, we recognized that touch was going to be a very sensitive issue for people as they come back to whatever the new normal would be, to swipe from Carrie Newhoff and all of the folks who are talking about what new normal is for us. And so we immediately swapped out all of our sinks, faucets, all of those things to touch free. So they're all, contactless soap, water, paper towel dispensers. So there was that piece. For our reopening, we're going to close off every other stall and kind of limit the number of people. We're only opening up our campus. Typically we hold about 1,200 in our auditorium, and we're going to open up for a registration of 300. So that limits the amount of people that are going to be in those bathrooms in the first place. We do have those kick plates those door kicks that you can put on there to open it up with your feet. However, our doors are extremely heavy because of our fire codes here. So we have added paper towel dispensers right next to them. There's to open that door, throw it in a trash can. And then right as you get out, we've installed hand sanitizer stations. So even if you do happen to touch the door, it's go out, hand sanitizer, wash it up, and then go. So that's what we've done with our
That's good, man. That's good. You nailed it. That was good. All right, Anna, what's another question we've got?
Okay, we have a couple people asking what everyone is doing about children's ministry right now.
Okay, I don't think anybody's offering children's ministry, so let's talk about what are you guys planning on? Okay, Jeff, what do you got, Jeff? You got something different?
So we're offering Kidsmen this coming weekend, and so we are using the RSVP app for that as well. Our kids team has set what their capacity is. I think they're doing no more than 50%. We are not allowing team members to wear masks in there. So if you're not comfortable in that as a volunteer, as a team member yet, we just don't want an environment where kids are in there and all the team members are in masks. So, our freedom and flexibility by our officials there is not mandated physical distancing. So it's to the extent feasible. And so we're going to do everything we can, but we know kids aren't going to necessarily have full.
Now, when you say kids, that doesn't include nursery, does it?
We are offering from 0 to 5th grade.
Okay. So you are including everything up to 5th grade.
Yeah, we're going to modify the programming, but not to the extent to force or to put the kids in the worship center.
Yep. Pastor Scott, what are y'all doing in Florida?
Well, as we opened up, we said we're going to have a phase 1. We specifically did not define phase 2 and 3, but in phase 1, we're not offering nursery. We're not offering children's ministry of any kind. As a result, the number of young families we have has been very small. We've started to conceptualize a date, kind of middle of this upcoming month, that we might move to a phase 2, that it include children's ministry. In the meantime, we're trying to gauge a couple of different things. One is the kind of capacities. The other is volunteer base. Because we don't have a lot of our younger families come back yet, we've got to have safety and the right volunteer base. We don't want to just have it to have it. So in the meantime, that's what we're trying to gauge, is whether we can garner enough volunteers, what that looks like, and who will lead that ministry.
Good.
Sutton,
Yep.
The one survey, we only sent out one survey, and that was to our kids volunteer team to get a feel before we made that decision. I was shocked. I think we were at 80% of the people who said we are ready now to come back, and that was with no precautions communicated. So that helped us knowing that. And again, 80% isn't 100, so there's still gaps, but.
Mm-hmm.
For us, as our sort of internal next phase starts July 12th. That's where you'll see age group programming. We could have done it 1st of July, but July 4th is not a good weekend. So the way we sort of bridge the gap, number one consideration for us is size. With, we're we've got all generations here, but a lot of large families. Brian can tell you in the Katy area is a lot of young families. And so when you typically 3,000 to 4,000 on a Sunday, more than, probably good 60% of that is young adults. But here is the issue is a large number of our over 65 population are our volunteers. So when we took those out of the pot of who could serve, is it dwindled our numbers down for what would be available on a Sunday morning to serve. And so for us, what we're doing is our what we call community groups. You may think Sunday school class, whatever you call them, is we got a number that meet on campus and plenty that meet in homes. But we're not going to do those on Sunday. So for us, for the last couple of weeks, is our community groups can meet on campus Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Fridays. And then we offer childcare for that because we could scale it to, for a couple of small groups, but we couldn't right now scale it for a number of volunteers for a large group of individuals. So
Brad, you think probably mid-July would be
July
sometime?
July 12th. So really,
Okay.
we'll open this week, May 31st. We do a lot of family worship. We do that a lot, but by nature of our church. So bringing your kids to church is not too far. It'll still be an obstacle. We anticipate that. So then July 12th, we'll have all that programming back for them.
So one question I've got for you guys is your church staff. Has there been some fear within your church staff, of coming back, and how have you led through that? What have you done? What can you help equip other pastors that are about to have those conversations? Tips that you would give them? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll talk. We can,
Please.
We in Missouri, we had a stay-at-home order. I don't remember what day it started, but it ended up being 4 weeks. And so we shut down the office. Before that, we shut down the office. I would say middle of March, we made it by appointment only. All deliveries were made. We have a foyer outside of our church office. Nobody came in unless they were staff. We have one staff member who has a mom who has a major heart condition, and she takes care of her. And so that was a very delicate situation we had to walk through. And so when we came back, after the stay-at-home order ended on May 3rd, we had a week where we basically said, hey, we're going to start a phased approach. All the pastors are going to be back in the office. You have the option to come back if you want to, but you also can work from home. Which that was a little bit tricky because we had to figure out technology. All of our people have laptops, so we had to work through that. And then the next week we said, okay, everybody's got to be back. But even for the employee that was a little concerned, what we did is I told her, I said, you can set up anywhere in the building. And so she was able to basically set her office up. We have a nursing room that used to be an office. And so she has set up in there. And so she'll be in there for probably a couple weeks. And we just this week opened up the office as normal. So last 2 weeks were still appointment only, deliveries outside. We'll still probably have deliveries made outside the door, but we are opening up the office this week, and everybody's back. We're not making people wear masks. If they want to, they can. We have rearranged a lot of our meeting spaces. So we used to meet, we have a weekly staff meeting, and it would be in a fairly small room crammed in. And so we've changed that where we have space to spread out. So that's what we've done.
Good. Anybody else? Talk about staff and
we do temperature checks when they come to the office. Hand sanitizer, just encourage personal hygiene, and then loving your coworker. So being considerate and careful as you go throughout the day. But we did ask all staff to come back in and have made modifications to roles for those who are uncomfortable coming back in this season. So we'll do that on Sunday. Well, Sundays, any team member, any staff member, any team member serving in any role will have temperature checked. No masks required. They're recommended, or not even recommended, because we don't want to police people. Or they say, why'd you recommend it? And then leaders not do it. So they're beneficial, they're welcomed, and they're available, but not required.
Yes, and we'll bring our staff back on the 1st. And so in preparation for doing that, one of the things that we learned is how efficient a lot of us actually are working at home. And so we had a pretty, we didn't have a very good amount of telecommuting allowance in our staff week. And now we're talking about flexing a lot more to allow some of our staff to telecommute in there. So that's what we're working on right now. And so when we come back, it'll be, we won't do one-on-one visits inside the office just yet. We'll wait until we get to kind of a phase 4 to open up completely.
Good. So Anna, what other questions do you have?
So people are asking a lot more detailed questions about service. So will you do communion? How will you do communion and offering? And then also, if you offer prayer after the service, small group prayer or anything like that, if you're modifying that for the time being.
Perfect. Let's take communion first. What are y'all doing with communion? What are your thoughts on communion?
We're doing it June 14th is our next time. And we've done, as a church before COVID, the Lord's Supper a lot of different ways. We pass it out, you come forward. We've done, we do it in the homes a lot. So we've used the, sort of portable kits before. And so we're using those again. And so you'll have the option is for us is we're still aware that our largest audience is online. Like right now I just looked as, registration for this Sunday for us is it's right about 600. So you can say, we're still down a percentage, but it's still large. That means our biggest audience is online
Right.
still. So we'll give people the option. They can come by during the week and pick up one, or they can use elements from home. But from a on-campus perspective is we'll have different stations where the family can go by, pick those up, bring those into worship service, and then it's self-contained from there. So we're going to do that on the 14th.
Good. Anybody else? What are you doing on communion? Anybody had communion every week, like it was a weekly activity, and now you're facing that, or?
We were every other week. We weren't every week. We were every other week. We'll see we will increase the amount of time we do that in our small groups, probably fewer times in the worship service. We're shortening our services to create more time between services for sanitation and clearing the space, et cetera. So reducing the number of elements within that service is going to be critical. When we do it in a service, we're leaning towards stations that people go to grab things as opposed to the passing.
That's good.
Yeah, so we do communion every week. Right now, we're going to have people bring their own in. It's kind of a BYOC, I guess. And then until we get to a place where we're probably going to run the 2-cup system, which is kind of a plastic cup with a cracker in the bottom, put a second cup in it with the juice, and then have them much more spread out than we typically would. So you don't have people reaching into the same cracker, kind of bowl
Right.
that we've had before.
Good. That was good. Anna, another question?
Do we want to touch on offering or prayer?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Anybody? I mean, I'm assuming most people are online giving. If you had anybody want to give any instruction as far as like y'all still having a box or envelopes or what you're doing as far as that's concerned?
We have. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say that we, of course, since the shutdown, we've transitioned almost completely to mail and online giving. And then when we reopened, we decided we would not pass a plate. We set up, although we always had, we set up an offering station in the back. I would say that after 2 weekends now, I can say that somewhere between 80 and 90% of all weekly offerings are still in the mail or coming online. A very small percentage has come in the offering plates in the back. And we don't have a plan yet to start passing the plate. Right now, our plan is just to keep having an offering station in the back.
That's good. Anybody else? Thoughts
So
on that?
we increased the number of boxes across the campus, and then won't be passing. And then as it related to the prayer team, we're eliminating that function at this point, not having the prayer team available after the services.
Okay. So how are you handling, just off that, Jeff, if you're not having a prayer team afterwards? I don't know. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of different types of churches here, but first time visitor, I want altar call type of experience. I want to meet a pastor. I want to talk to somebody. I want to find out about you. How are y'all directing within your service that for a first time guest that's, obviously they don't know what to do. So what are you doing?
So we have 2 other options for them. There is a guest tent outside. We're going to keep that, modify that experience, but there is a place for guests who wants to be identified out there. And then we have another area in our lobby called the Hub that is going to stay open. That's the place where people can get mass. They can grab a Bible. They can go there with questions. We're eliminating any type of handout. We also, our main thing is the communication card each week. We ask everybody to fill it out. So that's now digital. So if they want to be known, the guests can do it in two ways. They can text in. We use Clearstream to text in, or they can download our app, use the communication card, and communicate that way, put a prayer request in that way. So,
and you're giving direction to do that from the stage.
we're giving direction to do that from stage, pre-recorded host slot, mainly because we're trying to tighten that service.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm wondering is that as you're having more changes and more to do, but you're trying to bring down the service so that you can clean between services. I mean, it seems to me like a real squeeze on your time, and a great challenge to lock that through. Brad,
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, you're right. It's a challenge.
Anna, any other questions?
Yeah, we can close with a forward-looking question. So how, if you just started doing an online experience or a different kind of service, do you plan to continue to do that? And if so, do you think you'll do it continuously, or will you have an endpoint?
Yeah, let me ask that in a little bit different question, because I'm wondering how you guys are handling this. So you went for almost 2 months where you didn't have in person, and you were able to focus your entire staff to having online church. But now you guys are only getting 10, maybe 15, maybe 25% of your total population is coming back to church. So that means that at least 75% of your church is watching online. But you say I have the same staff, and so now you're having to do two things. You're having to do a in-person, and you're having to put all of your efforts towards, the online experience. So how are you managing that, just from a standpoint of having to do now both and put a whole lot of effort into both? Anybody?
Yeah, we actually kind of felt that Sunday. It was funny. So I've been doing the welcome for 8 weeks now, and previous to that, we always kicked to a welcome time, like a greet time, and we weren't going to do it, but it threw me for a loop because there was people in the room and they hadn't been. But I think what we felt Sunday was we need a whole lot more volunteers, because we like you said, we had, like, our student pastor has been running pro presenter for us, and our college and young adults guy has been managing social media comments on the stream, and so now those guys have other responsibilities, and so we actually had a long discussion today about how do we recruit volunteers, which is 10 times harder now because of COVID, that can run media stuff, because we had a pretty solid live stream prior to it, but we just elevated it, and I'm sure all of us did that. Mm-hmm. And now we have to figure out how to do this while still maintaining Sunday. I don't think that answers your question. I just acknowledge.
No, it's good. No, it's a pain point. Anybody want to hit that before we close?
We're having a lot of our staff understand that they have kind of a secondary duty now, right? They have a presence online. Our welcome team that is normally doing our welcome desk and our first time impressions desk, they are our online hosts for our online stream right now. We'll continue doing that. We may shift that off to volunteers, just like Hayes was saying. And so it's the recognition that they're kind of this dual hat now. We have to be thinking, all of us need to be thinking about, what does my online component of my job look like in this new normal? And because online is not going away, we're still reaching people for the gospel. Out in Hong Kong, we're having people check in. So we need to be continuing to provide that experience for people to reach, to have them understand who Jesus is. So that's awesome. That's going to be what we're focusing our efforts on, is dual hatting our staff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys coming in and joining today. I mean, it's big time help, I think, with a lot of churches. Pastor Scott, would you pray us out and pray for all the people online that are walking through, and some wisdom for all of us? Thank you.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we've spent together. Praise you for each person who's viewing this discussion, and for each of the churches that are represented here. We want to pray for your continued wisdom and guidance. We depend upon you, and we thank you. We love you, and we're just blown away by what you've done for us in the person of Jesus Christ. We want to reach more people for the gospel. And so we pray that you would help each of us respectively to do that, whether that's online or in person or in whatever format you'd send us. Make us ready for your purposes. We thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all very much. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks, guys.
And let us know how we can help you more at Vanderbloemen. So look forward to maybe doing an update maybe in a month or so.
Great.
Thank you all.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.